What's up, John?
Great to see you. Looking forward to this.
Me too, man. And by the way, I'm excited to have you on. But and if there's been any guest, I'll share this with you. Every year, this is my ninth year of podcasting, and every year I go on social media and I go to our community and I'm like, all right, who do y'all want to hear from this year, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we'll get so many comments, and your name came up just over and over and over and over and over again. So the
Oh, that's
audience,
super encouraging, dude.
yeah, man, the audience is
Yeah,
dying.
congrats on 9 years. 9 years
Thanks.
in podcasting is like 1,000 years, dude. Those are measured in dog years. That's a huge accomplishment.
They really are. I think they are, man. I looked this morning. We're notching up to like 1,200 episodes now. It's
That's
good.
crazy, dude.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's huge. Congratulations.
It's a lot of talking on this microphone. The bacteria buildup on this microphone alone might be
Yeah,
terrible.
you got to ask a lot of questions of a lot of people. That's a lot of,
Dude.
yeah, totally.
Well, let's start with little John. Let's start with when you were younger, man. I would love to hear, what was your childhood like growing up, as far as like your own dad, and I'd even
Yeah.
love to hear like activities that you really loved to do growing up.
Yeah, so I was born in North Carolina, lived there the first 6 years of my life, and then we moved to Massachusetts when I was going into the first grade. So big change, North Carolina to Massachusetts. My dad planted a church up there, which was pretty unusual at the time in the 80s to have plant a Southern Baptist church in New England.
Oh, wow,
So I kind of look at growing up as I had an entrepreneur for a father, like a church planner is an entrepreneur. And so lived in Ipswich, Massachusetts for 3 years, first grade through third, which just was amazing. Ipswich is, if you think of New England, this is what it looks like. It's on the water. There's a castle called Crane's Castle that if you Google is unbelievable. They would hold the senior prom at the castle. So it's
Really?
apple orchards and clams and high tide and low tide. And so I spent a bunch of amazing years there. And then we moved to Central Mass, which is more like the middle of any state. But really fun blue collar town, Hudson, Massachusetts. Grew up liking writing. I had a third grade teacher laminate some poems I wrote, and she made me feel like a writer. So I always felt like, wow, I think I could maybe do this someday. So Mrs. Harris at Doyon Elementary School was definitely inspirational to me at a young age. And then I had a dad who's a communicator. So my dad, I wouldn't have said it at the time. Like I wasn't some eighth grader like, oh man, I really like the way he structured that joke in that sermon. But I got to watch somebody speak from stage as a normal thing. And so I think that, and then he would take me to comedy clubs once I hit 18. Like we'd go into Boston and watch comedians. And so humor was always a big part of my upraising. My dad to this day will call me up and be like, oh man, did you see that line so-and-so did? Like that was such a good, left turn when you thought you were going one direction. And so, yeah, I grew up with a communicator as a father, which I think really influenced a lot of what I do now for a living.
Wow, man, that's cool. Like, so it sounds like you bring up your dad several times, as far as just in your story alone. What was, looking back on it, what was besides being a speaker, being a pastor? It sounds like he really kind of did life with you, in a really positive way. What are some things? I know you have an 18-year-old, you have a 20-year-old. What are some things that you learned from him that you took into your own fatherhood journey?
Yeah, I would say be silly. Like he was the dad that would organize like the ground is lava, tag at a playground. Like so he was a playful dad. And I think that's
cool.
That's one of the things I've taken into what I do. And I think about that with my own daughters and and I love to make them laugh. Like making my wife and my two kids laugh is the best laugh of all. And they've heard every joke I have, so it's hard. It's a really big challenge. Like they know my material. So I would say that was a big thing I took into. And then the curiosity. He has a huge curiosity about life where he'll go through these phases where like he gets into astronomy for 2 years and he really deep dives in it because he's curious, or he gets into, some form of history. And so I think I learned from him also like a constant love of learning. So I'll read more than 100 books this year. And I think that part of that love of ideas and learning was the way he looked at the world.
Just to recap, so does your dad have the full royalty rights to the Floor is Lava game show?
Yeah, no, I'm sure there was like a Japanese game show in 1982 where they actually did that to people. So I don't think he patented that by any means. But that was big. I remember plenty of times doing that and friends being like, man, your dad's fun. Like
Yeah.
that was something I think that stuck with me.
And that's a cool house to go visit your friend in, right? Like, so friends of yours, right? Like, if you got the cool fun dad, it's much more pleasurable to be at that house versus like, oh my God, your dad, it scares me.
Yeah, the
Right. Or like,
distant, scary dad. No, I
yeah,
don't want to be I don't like hanging out with the friend dad. Like, I don't need your dad to be like trying to win friendship with the kid, because then
right.
like that's a terrible model for parenting. Like,
I agree.
like, and so I don't need that, but the fun dad is definitely, where they'll ask questions, they'll tease some, they'll like they're willing to throw the football kind of thing. That I think is to me, that's how I define a fun dad.
Yeah, I think there's definitely got to be some boundaries around it, as far as that goes. Yeah, the interesting thing here, my older boys told me recently that I scare their friends, and I'm like, what? And
I
they're
mean, your
like, yeah,
podcast logo has two swords in it, dude. I don't know where they're getting that. It's got a helmet for battle. Yeah, it's weird that they would say that you scare them. Where could that have possibly
right.
come from?
Well, geez, now that you say
that, what a shocker. Yeah,
oh
that's
my
funny.
gosh. No, man, it's weird because like I'm always like I greet the boys when they come over here, the girls too, and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And like I joke with them, and I'm like, what in the world is scary about me? But maybe you're right. Maybe
I think that sometimes kids can confuse intentionality with scary.
I can see that. Yeah.
And can confuse like, oh, he's got some goals, or there's an ambition there, with like, whoa, this is serious. Where
Yeah. A good point.
So I think sometimes they muddle those two things.
That's a good point. I think you might be onto something there. So let's go back to like the fun, right? And
yeah.
So looking back, what were some of the fun things and the goofy things that you incorporated into experiences with your kids?
Oh yeah, well, I mean, like I'll still do stuff that's silly. Like I like to, and I'll ask them ridiculous questions. And now my kids are smart enough that they're like, I can see the gleam in your eye. I know this is a setup. Like I know you're setting me up for something ridiculous. But like just silly stuff. Like I remember 4 or 5 years ago, I was telling my oldest daughter, like, man, I really would love to get a 911 someday. Like that's, and I'm writing about that right now. I'm working on a new book. And I wrote in the intro of this one chapter I'm working on was like how much I'd love to get a Honda Accord. And like, man, I just love that practicality and all this. And then I was like, you didn't believe a second of that. Nobody dreams of a Honda Accord. Like, but everybody's afraid to say their real dreams. So they disclaim them and go, not that I ever would, but not like we have a real, like men especially have a super difficult time with desire and being honest about what they want. And so like I told my daughter when she was a freshman in high school, I said, I'll drop you off at college in a 911 or I'll give you $100. And when I dropped her off, one of the last things I had to do was hand her $100 bill and be like, I didn't do it yet. You're right. You got, and like, she was thrilled. And like, we joked about that for years. She'd be like, dude, I don't see this car coming. I don't see any moves. And so like, for me, that was a fun, silly thing. Or like speaking, like we paid them to read books a couple summers. Like we felt like they weren't reading a lot of the classics in school anymore. And that there were books that we were like, man, they need to really. So we made a list and I would see her at the pool. I'd see my kids at the pool with like, My Antonia or The Great Gatsby or Great Expectations, like while their friends are on TikTok. And some parents are like, well, you shouldn't pay them. And I was like, well, you get paid to work. Like, I'm not going to say to my kid, hey, you know how there's an app designed to trigger every bit of your dopamine all at once? I'd like you to ignore that and also read this book from the 1840s at the pool just because. Like, no, I want to teach them, listen, your time has value. And then they're like, oh, let's go. I'm all in. And so we're always playing, I would say we're always playing little games like that where we're like, and then we have a sarcastic, like not sarcasm in belittling way, but inside jokes as a family. So like one that we do sometimes is if somebody say, I only get recognized in like 3 places, Costco, church, and like downtown Franklin where I live. And somebody will come up and they'll say, oh, I like your books, and we'll talk for 30 seconds. I have the best level of fame, by the way. I know you've interviewed famous people. I have the best level because once a week, maybe 3 times a week, a stranger comes up and tells me I'm good at my job, and then they walk away. Like, that doesn't happen for any other profession. An accountant is never in the streets and somebody comes up and goes, "Hey, you're great at taxes. I just wanted to thank you." Like, it's the best. I get random strangers, but I can go anywhere. I'm never like, I can go anywhere. And so if somebody runs up to me in my town and says, "Hey, I really like your book. Can I get a photo?" When they walk away, I'll say to my girls, that person was so thrilled for those 30 seconds, and you get to spend all day with me. I mean, what a gift. You get a whole day with me. And they'll go, and I'll joke with them, and then they'll joke back and go, "Yeah, you're so regionally famous. It's amazing to be with you in the certain regions because you've achieved such regional fame." Right. And so, like, I think part of having fun with your kids is having inside jokes, like, and having a shared language, and spending enough time that happens, and desiring to spend time together. So we did all this stuff, like fun birthday parties, all that kind of stuff. We hike with them. We were really deliberate about creating moments where it was impossible to have a phone. So like kayaking is impossible to be on your phone. Camping when you have no service is impossible to have your phone. So my wife was really good at creating moments like that where we spent a lot of time together with each other. But like right now, my oldest daughter's studying in London for the semester, and she's texting me constantly photos of Porsches and McLarens she's seeing in the streets, because London has like the richest people on the planet. So she's like, "Ooh, look at this Targa, glass roof, nice." Or she'll be like, "This McLaren hasn't moved in 6 months. It's a Saudi Prince and it's bright pink and there's a story on it in the London Times." So like that's another connection point. So I'm always looking for fun connection points, but we also have a shared kind of internal language.
I love that, man. I just had a guy by the name of Stephen Robertson on the podcast yesterday. He wrote a book called Aliens Among Us, and basically how to relate to Gen Z. And he talks,
nice.
Yeah, and his message was so powerful, and it's actually right in line with what you just said. He's like, what you just said, right, was about these, like, your inner dynamics of your family, how you guys speak to each other, your private jokes, like how she texts you, right? That just shows that you're on her mind, and she's sharing these things with you. Is that he talks about kids have a family and they have expectations of the relationship, right? It's a lot like when we go into a hotel room and we expect there to be a king size bed, but we don't go and talk about the king size bed because it's part of the expectation, right? It's like, well, of course my hotel room has a king size bed. He goes, what's really fascinating, he said he stayed at this one hotel, which actually was in in Brazil. And the owners of the hotel knew that he loved like these certain type of chocolates, like loved them. And he went and checked in his room one night, and what was on the table with a personalized note, it was a plate of those chocolates. And
nice.
Right. He was like, "Oh my gosh, this is amazing." And he talks about that, and he compared it to exactly what you just said, which is like, well, kids expect and parents expect there to be a quote unquote king size bed in the relationship, right? Meaning like there's going to be things about my parents in this relationship that are just going to be, but it's the chocolate. It's the unexpected things. It's special things. It's the language we use with each other. It's the private jokes. It's I know you better than anybody. It's me betting whether or not I'm going to have a 9/11 by the time I drop you off at college.
And then when you don't, you give her $100 bill as you leave. Like that was, and that's a fun way to start your first day of college. Like, yeah, man. That was more money than I ever held in my hand in my entire 4 years of college.
Oh my gosh. I remember like when I was younger, like when I got 100, I would actually save my money to go get $100 bill.
Oh yeah. It felt like some sort of currency from space. It was the best.
Right, you like put it all around the $1 bills that you have, and you just thought you were awesome.
No, it's amazing. It still makes me feel like a little kid. Like, and so that was, we try to find a bunch of fun games. I would say like games are a big, and then we do play games like we're playing Monopoly Deal or card games, or we're connecting, and then again hiking. We hike a ton. We went to Flagstaff last May and did 48 miles in the 6 days we were there, and so we're really deliberate about that kind of thing.
That's awesome, man. Like those are the memories. Those are core memories. Your kids never forget those. And that's so awesome. You guys do that. The direction I'm so curious to go in. So I know you wrote this amazing book on goals, right? Which is stories. And I love the fact that you put it into stories, and you wrote that book, I think, to serve everyone. You know, you talk about like, hey, if you're a retiree, there's a story in here for you. If you're in college,
Yeah.
there's a story in here for you. If you're a single mom, there's a story in here for you. So, you know, I was very curious I just wrote my fourth book, and it's coming out on Father's Day. And the way I wrote this book, it's called The Spirit of Fatherhood, was different than I've written the other books. But I've never actually thought, well, I thought about it, but I was just like, man, I don't know how to go about that. Because I look at someone like you who could probably write, who can easily write a book around like, hey, this is how you go about your goals, right? This is the most effective way to go about your goals, right? But instead you did it in story, and you did it about different people. I would love to know what was the idea behind writing the book in that way?
Well, I just think that over time, my writing has matured to where I don't want it to be just a story about me. Like, I'm 48. This is like, that was my 9th book. God forbid I found a 9th way to write a memoir. Like, I'm only 48. I haven't climbed Everest. Like, I haven't launched a rocket. Like, I don't need to do another book where it's like, I found another interesting angle about Jon Acuff. And so I wanted, where my book shifted was when I started to test them before I released them. So what I mean is, like, I've got, 1,000 people, in a private goal community. I've got 20,000 people in a bigger one. And so when I have ideas, I test them with real people. And then the ones that work, I move them forward. And it's kind of like they graduate. So by the time it's in a book, it's been tested with real people. And then it's been given the gift of real stories from real people. So I don't have to guess, okay, I hope this idea I came up with in my office is helpful. I go, no, I know the retiree, Sue, tried this idea. Here's how she interpreted it. Here's how it worked. I'll share her story so that somebody else who doesn't look like me, who isn't my age, who doesn't have my life experience can go, oh, like, I feel like every book written today, every influencer account, whatever, should say, are you married? Yes or no? Is this person giving advice? Do they have kids? Yes or no? How many kids? What are their ages? Because you get this advice from somebody who's 31 or 27. They're not married. They have no kids. And they're like, just work 90 hours a week. Yeah, that works if it's just you. Like, when you're single, 100% of the time can be dedicated to you. Like, but you get married, and that's what's interesting is, like, married goes from me to we. Then you have kids, and it goes from we to they. And layers of you kind of get, like, for me anyway, I can't speak for everybody, layers of my own selfishness got worn off as I started to serve a family. Like, and so I just think that the stories make it interesting, because then it's relatable in a way that's bigger than just my story. Then it's easier for other people to go, oh, I'm a single mom, I'm a dad of 5, I'm a college student. And I just think it makes it a wider, more accessible conversation than if it was just presented through my lens.
Yeah, that definitely makes the stories extremely relatable and situational, most importantly. You know, looking at that book, I would love for you to share a dad story, just maybe something that, or a story of a man who might be in our age. When I say our age, I mean the audience, somewhere between the ages of 30 and 50. You know, have a couple kids, and it's interesting that you started out that dynamic the way you did, where it's like, hey, you should just check the box on these. You know, are you single? Yes or no? Are you married? And then how many kids do you have? Because you're right. You know, the same rules don't necessarily apply, given.
No, it's, dude, if you tell a dad of 2 toddlers, you should have a 60-minute morning routine every day. No, you shouldn't. Like, tell a 2-year-old, I have to do a cold plunge followed by journaling, followed by gratitude exercise, followed by, like, good luck. The day you decide to do that is the day the 2-year-old is going to go, I'm not going to sleep for like a month. I'm going to get up at like 4 a.m. just because, like, no, like, but that advice works. Again, that advice works if you're by yourself or if it's just you and your spouse. Like, so that's what always cracks me up about life. I think all of advice should be a la carte. I think you should interpret it and reshape it. And so I think we forget that. And so we hear a certain type of dad or a certain influencer or whatever go, you got to get up at this time. And it's said with this, unless you want to be a loser, unless you don't want to be successful. And then what if your schedule, like, what if you work the night shift? Like, what if your schedule isn't that? What if you're more of a night person, whatever, and we feel this great shame and then we don't change our lives? And so the older I get, I think when I was younger, I had a lot of arrogance and very little wisdom. And the older I get, I'm like, man, I know a lot less than I thought I did. Like, And I'm much more flexible in my advice because one size doesn't fit all. And I
Yeah.
want you to be able to go, yeah, man, I did. Like for me, a good book, if I get one or two life-changing ideas out of it, it was worth the $20. Like I
Oh,
wouldn't pay
100%.
$20 for a life-changing. Are you kidding me? So like, and that's all I'm going to be able to remember anyway. I'm not going to remember every line 10 years later, but I know like War of Art by Stephen Pressfield. The thing that changed me, that one was things that, there's only fear around things that matter. And fear is actually a flashlight towards where you should go, not a warning sign to stop. Because if it didn't matter to you, you wouldn't feel fear about it. If it wasn't important, you wouldn't feel fear about it. That shifted my understanding of fear. Totally worth it. So that, but the question you asked was a story about a dad. A recent one that I really liked was this guy, Dennis Cockerham. He's in this goal community I teach. And he posted a picture of him crossing his first half marathon, and he was holding his kid's hands. They crossed the finish line with him.
Dude, that's so cool.
And the story was amazing, but what was super fun to me was he joined the community to get better at his side hustle. Like he has a wasp removal business, but what happens always is that discipline is contagious. Change is contagious. Like I worked for Dave Ramsey for 3 years, and we'd have people come up and go, Dave, your finance book changed my marriage. And he didn't write a marriage book. But when you work on your finances and at one area of your life improves, it starts to bleed into the other areas, and you start to see a larger degree of life change. And so Dennis was one of those dudes that he got into the group to be like, I want to do my business better. And then he was like, I think I could run a little bit. And then it just started to kind of mushroom or mustard seed through the rest of his life. So those are the stories that get me fired up. And then, for me, that's the thing I think about dads is like, and then like the lesson for his kids, like they got to cross the finish line too. Like you don't know what kind of ripple effect that's going to have on a kid's heart. So that's one of those stories that really encouraged me recently.
That is really cool, man. And I'm visualizing that as it's happening, like how meaningful that probably is for him. I want to really talk about goals, as far as a lot of us have them. Very few of us achieve them, right? And I think that we could really take this particular conversation that you and I are having and give the audience the best way to go about goals. But here's where I really would love to take it to.
Sure.
Helping our kids identify and achieve their goals as well, and teaching them how to go about them, right? So I cannot remember, I'm going to butcher the statistics, I think, but I think it was by the end of January, it's 23% of people that had a New Year's resolution goal have basically ditched it by the end of the month. I think that that's a stat.
The two stats I've seen, 92% of all New Year's resolutions fail, according to the University of Scranton. They did a study. And then Strava studied 800 million athletic activities, and the majority of people have quit by the second Friday in January. So 800 million test case is pretty good for a sample size. And so, the thing with goals, like I always tell, if we're talking to dads especially, the problem is dads, and I would say high performers in general. And if you're listening to this podcast, you're a high performer. You don't feel like it most of the time, but the reality is low performers don't listen to podcasts like this. They just don't. They don't even know this category of podcasts exists. So congratulations, you're a high performer, but being a high performer doesn't automatically make you a high achiever. We all know people who are capable of amazing short sporadic bursts of high performance, but they don't get high achievement over the long term. And what happens is, in studying it, is there's 3 different kind of zones people bounce between. They bounce between a chaos zone, the comfort zone, and the potential zone. So the comfort zone, we all know that one. It's the pajama pants zone. It's no goals, no actions, no results. It's you're stuck, you're in a rut, you're in a funk. But the more dangerous one, in my opinion, is often the chaos zone, because that's when you swing in from comfort all the way to chaos and try to do everything. So you get inspired. You watch Gladiator. You hear an Eminem song. You're like, Mom's spaghetti. I'm going to lose myself. And you say, I'm going to lose 10 pounds. I'm going to read more. I'm going to do a cold plunge every day. I'm going to journal all the time. I'm going to connect with other men. And you try to do it all, and it's chaotic, and you can't do anything. And so, like, I did a study with my audience. The average person had 22.8 goals they were working on. You ever try to juggle 22 balls at the same time? Like, I can't do 3, never mind 22. So that's why we have the phrase in our country, yo-yo diet. Yo-yo diet comes from people being in the comfort zone, doing nothing. getting inspired and yo-yoing all the way to the chaos. It's too much. It overwhelms them and they fail. And in between those two is what I call the potential zone, where it's the Goldilocks zone. It's not too many. It's not too few. It's just right. And that's what I'm always trying to help dads dial in on is, okay, for you, where's your potential zone? Where do you need to be pushed beyond what you think you can do? Because I feel like people need to be called beyond themselves by other people. So it's helpful to have a coach. It's helpful to have a community. Where's that spot for you? And I had I'm friends with this guy, Greg Sankey, who you should have on this podcast. He's brilliant. He's the commissioner of the SEC, the football, not finances. And he was talking to me about the concept of the difference between doable hard and destructive hard. That you need doable hard. You need to be challenged, but there's a destructive hard you can get into if you're not careful. So I think a lot of what you're doing as a dad when it comes to your own goals is finding where's that spot? Where's that spot? Where's that spot? And that's, I think, a lifelong challenge. I think you do that for your entire life. And so that's what's fun for me about goals is helping men and women kind of dial into where's their potential zone between those two, comfort and chaos. And the metaphor I often use for people is it's the tortoise and the hare. So if you think about it, the hare in the fable only had two speeds, sprint or sleep. So he sprinted, he was dominating, and then he took a nap because he wanted to show off. And then the turtle passes him and he's panicked, so he sprints again, but he lost the race. He didn't have a middle gear. He didn't have a potential zone where he could, if he had run at 10% of his speed, he would have won by a margin. But he only had two speeds, sprint or sleep. And I think a lot of people, that's where they get stuck, is they only have two gears and you need a middle gear.
So one thing, I love what you're saying here. I want to collide these two worlds together. We've been saying this in our community for dads for a long time, is that most dads are full throttle or no throttle. They're either going, right? Yeah. We're either going to get in the car.
My daughter said, Dad, you're either OCD or no CD. Like you're either all in or you're all out. Like OCD or no CD. And I thought, oh, kids can tell you the truth sometimes.
Is your daughter the second born?
No, they're both daughters. I got two daughters.
Okay, so the one you dropped off to college with the 9/11 is it same one?
No, different. The second born said that OCD, no CD set.
Okay, I was gonna say like the second, like because I could totally see my second born saying something like that because he's always
that was
like,
totally her. Yeah, of course.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. But as far as like we're full throttle or no throttle. We're either going to get in the car and drive 90 miles an hour, or we're not going to leave the garage. We're either going to go to the gym and crush a 2-hour workout, or we're not going to work out at all.
Yeah.
So I love this, the potential zone. Let me ask you this: as far as guardrails go, when we're identifying a goal, and we want to get tripped up, and by the way, I took a note here of the doable and the destructive. Because I even think about this with my own goals, that I've done in the past, and I'm like, I'm just gonna work out 2 times a day, every day, right? And like
forever,
things like
forever. It's a foolish goal when your time frame is forever, and people do that. I talk to guys that'll go, I write every Tuesday. I don't go, how many weeks you done that? They go, this is the first one. I'm like, oh, so it's already at every stage. You've done it one time. You're already declaring this is the new normal. Yeah. We all do it.
So let me ask you this, when we are identifying a goal and we're trying to really understand, okay, comfort, potential. Yeah. And then the other one was chaos, right? And how do we know what lane we're in?
I'll give you a really easy exercise. So I like to do what I call a time gap analysis. So I've had guys tell me, John, I'm going to start doing 10 sales calls a day. Like, I really want to get my numbers up. Like, I want to get my numbers up. I want to crush this year. I go, cool. I go, how many are you doing right now? They'll go, 2. I said, okay, you're going to 5X your, okay, cool. I'll say, how long will that take? And they'll go, about 15 extra hours a week. And I'll go, how many free hours do you currently have in your work schedule? And they'll go, none. What are you talking about, free hours? I don't have any. And I go, your goal's already, it's guaranteed to fail. You just tried to fit 15 extra hours into a week that held 0. Like, of course. And so a lot of times that, like, what I'll tell guys is time is the only honest metric. Like, time is the only honest metric. It's fun to talk about all the stuff we're going to do, but your calendar tells the truth. Your calendar is just going to sit there and go, Yeah, you currently have room for 4 minutes of free time a day, and you have a 5 hour plan. So something's gonna break. And then
Yeah.
so I often have to I do the opposite approach where I'm like, let's try it and build on it and be successful and have momentum and get some wind and versus like we have this attitude of like go big or go home. Most people go home. And we don't talk about that. Like most people go home because what sounds noble is to say, I'm going to do this massive thing. And there's ego involved there for all of us. Like, I'm going to do this massive thing. I remember maybe it was about a year ago, I heard there was a president that somebody was talking about that wrote 10 thank you notes a day. And I was like, oh, I'm going to do that. And I wrote one. And then I was like, so now I just have to do this 3,649 more times this year, 10 a day. That's crazy for me to think the path is from 1 to 3,600. Like, so what if I instead said, I'm going to write 4 a month for the first 3 months. I'm going to get 12 evidences of my success, 12 signs of proof. And then I'm going to double it. Okay. Now I'm going to do 8 a month. Like, but it doesn't feel sexy. It doesn't feel shiny. So we don't like kind of that practical side of things. But again, the older I get, the more I'm interested in long-term sustainable compounding success. So I don't get super excited when they're like, oh man, that person's business is killing it and they've been killing it for a year. I'm like, I'd love to see like year 12. Like, or that author sold like a book and it's been a 2-year YouTube channel. It's huge. I'm like, I want to know year 15. So like a dude like Craig Groeschel, who's a friend of mine, he's been at a high level for like 20 years. I want to ask that guy like, okay, what are some of the things you're doing? Where are you? Like, how are you dialing in? How are you staying dialed in? That's what I asked Greg Sankey. Like you're running the SEC, the most successful sports division in the world right now. What are you doing? Like, what are the and like, when I ask him, he has 10 things he can tell me. The people I talk to that are at the levels I'd like to be, all are doing a million little things nobody sees, and they're all really deliberate, and so that's what I like to study. So with goals, if a guy was listening to this and was like, I want to try a new goal, I'd go, man, awesome. Let's start a small goal. Let's get an easy goal. Let's get some success, dude. Let's start with just a walking regimen. Let's just start walking. Let's start, let's build on that. Like, that's what I did. My neighbor owned a CrossFit gym, and he was like, he gave me a plan, and I was like, oh, it's not enough. And he was like, yeah, you want to overdo it and just never do it again? You want to overdo it for like a week and a half and then quit for the rest of the year? And I was like, yeah, kinda. He's like, yeah, I'm not going to let you do that. So he gave me what I felt like was a slow, like, ugh. And I've done it hundreds of times now. Like, at varying rates and different weights and all that. But it was because he was like, nah, dude, I know you want to jam the gas pedal, but I've seen your type 1,000 times, and I want you to be talking about it on a podcast 3 years later. Not, yeah, I tried that for a minute. It didn't work. So that small goals, man, a small goal. That's such a great start.
I love that, man. I just experienced something like this myself. So I recently went through a pretty bad knee injury back in August, and it was bad. Like, my knee was hemorrhaging. It was bleeding internally for 3 months.
Jeez.
It sucked.
Do you have to do that little exercise with your arms at the gym where it's like you're riding a bike with your hands?
Dude, I did. You know that one? I was just like, oh, great. Like, I'm 75, right?
Yeah, exactly.
But yeah, I did. And ended up needing surgery. And, fitness has been a huge part of my life for 30 years. And like, I took a lot of pride in being able to do, like, I think I maxed out one day on like 22 pull-ups straight. I was just like,
which is a ton of pull-ups.
It's a lot of pull-ups. I was like, yes, this is cool. And I was able to sustain doing 20 plus pull-ups for a long time. And then I got hurt, and my fitness kind of took a back seat and gained some weight. And then I'll never forget this. I went to do pull-ups, and it had been months since I did them, and I did 4. And I was like, oh my gosh, what has happened to my body? And I went to a good friend of mine who's a fitness coach, and I'm like, this sucks. Like, I was complaining about it and all that. And he's like, what do you want to do? I was like, I want to get back to my 22 pull-ups. He's like, what's your plan? I was like, I'm just going to try to hit 22 pull-ups. He goes, what's your plan? And I was like, I don't know. He's like, well, you need a plan. He's like, you hit 4 today. What are you going to hit by next Wednesday? And I was like, I don't know. I think I can do 7. He's like, great, hit 7. what are you going to do the week after that? I was like, I don't know, I'll shoot for 10. And he's like, great.
Mm-hmm.
So week 2 is 10. And went on and on and on for a few weeks. And then I hit my 22 pull-ups, but it took like 5 weeks and of doing pull-ups like every day, but I would always ratchet it up just a little bit. And that was just such a powerful reminder of exactly what you're just talking about, those micro goals. Like if I am set out, I'm going to try to do like 22 pull-ups and I just can't do it. Well, then I'm just going to probably give up and be like, well, I guess I'm just not doing pull-ups anymore. But like having those micro goals, those small, like little tiny hills to climb actually created like a ton of excitement around it. Like, oh man, like, all right, this week, 9's the number. I'm going to try to hit 9. And it just made it like those little wins, man. And by the time I think it was week 5 or 6 that I finally hit those 22 pull-ups again, I was like on cloud 9. I was like, man, not only did this happen, but I got to like win little bits at a time along the way, which
that's one of the things I say is like the work adds the worth. So the work adds the worth. An example of that I give is like no one's super proud of a seashell they bought at a store. Like anytime you go to the beach, there's always like a crummy little store that has like exotic shells that are massive. Yeah. No one ever buys one of those and then brings it home to their friends like, can you believe I found this? Like, because you didn't. Like, so but true. If you got up every morning early and tried to beat the tide and beat all the other shell collectors and like you knew what you were looking for and you found one, like if you found some massive conch shell, like you would be so excited and be like, look what I found in the ocean. And so I think sometimes we're tempted by the purchase, like, okay, I want the fast thing, I want the easy thing. But man, the work adds to the worth. That's why when you hear stories like the lady who wrote The Help got rejected 62 times by 62 publishers. Like, it's a sucky story if it is, hey, the first publisher saw how great it was and they published it. You wouldn't be like, that's amazing. One publisher, but 62, you go, ooh, that work creates worth. And what you described is what I call a goal ladder. You just have to build a goal ladder. And the problem is most people only have 2 rungs on their ladder. They have the first day, like, and then they have the very top. So if you had a neighbor and you were going to clean your gutters and he came over and you were going to borrow his ladder and goes, here you go. And it was a 12-foot ladder and one rung was at the bottom and one rung was at the top. You go, this is broken. How am I supposed to do this? And that's what most goals are. So I always tell people, with some actions, let's actionify your goal. Let's add some rungs. Let's add a ton of rungs between the first day and the 22 pull-ups. The first day and you wrote the book. The first day and you made the $1 million. What are the rungs that we can add? And that's a lot. It's a lot easier to climb a ladder when you've got a rung every 6 inches, like anybody. And it's safe and it's fun and there's progress and every day you get to win a little bit. Like, think about it like writing a book. So if my only rung is like to hold the finished book, that's a long, terrible year. And no offense, the feeling of holding it lasts about 30 seconds. I better learn to have some rungs along the way that I enjoy, because the process is a year. The holding the finished thing is like a minute. That I wouldn't trade a year for a minute. But if along the way I'm like, oh, that subtitle works. Yeah, that was the rung I climbed today. Or, oh, I just got this story. It's a crazy story. I'm going to put it in there. That's a rung, and I'll keep climbing that ladder and I'll keep engaged. And that's, it feels cliche to say like it's not about the destination, it's about the journey, but it's cliche because it's true. And you've got to learn to love the along the way moments, because you have 1,000 times more of those than the final moment.
Yeah, that is so true. And you're right. There's something about the fun factor about it, getting like these micro wins. It's like these small challenges. Dude,
and fun matters. I wrote a book called Finish, where I commissioned a research report with a PhD named Mike Peasley. And we studied whether fun has value or not, because I wanted to, most of my job, I write books and I go to companies to speak about the books. And so I go to all these serious companies and I want to be able to say, like, you don't have to be whimsical, but if you make things that are hard fun, people are more, like, do better at them. They enjoy them more. And so the 2 stats you look at whenever you study a goal, you look at 2 things. You look at satisfaction and performance. Satisfaction is how did you feel during it? Performance is how did you do? Those are the 2 metrics that matter. Anybody that comes on this podcast, anything from goal perspective that they teach you, better raise both of those. Because if I only raise your satisfaction, like, oh, the book was really funny, it was really interesting, but your performance fails, you end up smiling all the way to last place. If I only raise your performance, but not your satisfaction, you become every rich, miserable person you've ever met. If you've ever met somebody who's really rich and really miserable, and you go, how do those two things exist in the same life? It's because they overfocus on their performance and they never stop to think about their heart. Or their plan was, I'm going to be miserable for 6 decades, but then I'm going to retire to Florida and it's all going to change. Like, I'm going to practice misery for 65 years, but then when I get a golf cart, it'll all be different. I'm always like, dude, I have terrible news for you. You're putting a lot of pressure on a golf cart. Like, you really are. So you have to do both satisfaction, performance. And the people in this study, we had nearly 900 people that made their goal fun, like added deliberate fun, were 31% higher satisfaction, but the crazy side was 46% more successful. They are wildly more successful because they made difficult things fun. And that's what, as I study people that I look up to, that I want to be like, that I'm curious about how they do what they do, they're always finding ways to add fun, especially to things that aren't inherently fun. Anyone can have fun doing something that's inherently fun. Like, going on vacation is fun. I'm talking about the stuff where you're like, man, I hate invoicing. Like, it's not fun. Or I hate following up on details. It's not fun. The people that add fun to that, those are the ones that really succeed at goals.
Can you, what I'd really love to do is I'd love to go in this direction of helping our kids
totally
identify goals. And by the way, I love this messaging around sprinkling in the fun, right? And how we can make these things even more enjoyable. So as a dad, helping kids achieve their goals, what do you think is most critical, and how do we make them fun?
Well, it's funny you asked that. We just did a teen version of my last book, All It Takes Is a Goal. So my daughters wrote a book called How Teens Win. That's exactly about this conversation. So it's definitely fresh on my mind. It comes out in September. But I think a big part of it, one thing that I tell dads specifically is that, like, I had a dad go, my 14-year-old is not disciplined. They don't have goals. They're not getting up on time. They're not doing all these things. They don't have their life together. And I said, when did you feel like you kind of got your life together? And he said, about 32. And I said, no offense to your fathering. Like, maybe with your great parenting, you cut off a year of his development, but you gave yourself 32 years to get your act together, and you expect with your words, the 14-year-old's going to have it. Like, you're trying to cut off like 18 years of development that kid needs. So I think one is our expectations as parents. Like, the problem is when we judge our kids' development against our current understanding. So I believe and know a lot of things at 48 because I'm 48. And I go, man, I know the value of hard work. Man, I know why you got to follow up with people. I know how important gratitude is. I know. So I think you have to level set your expectations, not lower them, but also go, yeah, it's taken me 40 years to get here. I'm not going to shove that on a 12-year-old because that's not how life works. So one is you level set your expectations. And then I think you really pay attention to what lights your kid up. I think you have to, there's this fine dance where you want to nurture it, but not suffocate it. The temptation as a parent is your kid goes, I like art. And then for the next 10 birthdays, everything they get is art focused. They're like, oh, you're an artist. Here's an art pad. Here's a palette. Here's markers. And you can suffocate something. So there's this tension back and forth when you're trying to nurture it, but you don't want to suffocate it. So I think that's part of it. So you have to be present to your kid's life to even notice those things that are lighting them up. Like, and notice. So like for me, and kids, once you have more than one kid, you realize they came to the planet with their own personalities. Like, once you have more than one kid, like my 2 daughters are wildly different. The way they process the world is just very different. So how I approach goals with the one is different than the other. But again, I pay attention to what they're curious about, and then I try to nurture that. So I try to add a little bit of fuel, a little bit of excitement. If they're willing to read, I'm like, oh, how can we make this fun for them? Like, they could have a summer job where they make $1,000, or I could pay them $1,000 because they already have a good work ethic. Like, that's the other thing too, is like, you can't treat every kid the same way, because like some kids are great to get their license at 16. Some you're like, that dude needs another year kind of like learning, like they're not at the same level. And so it's the same with work ethic. I think sometimes parents make the mistake and go, they got to learn the hard way. And you go, if they already are good at the thing, why are you like, who are you trying to prove they know how to do the thing to? So like with my kids, we try to really custom the goals to who they are, their personality. We invite them into it. We ask them to come up with some, so that they're invested in it. And you also, in the same way that like, if you punish kids the same way, two different kids, they react differently. So if you have an extrovert kid and you go, you got to spend time in your room, like go be by yourself, that hurts. If you tell an introvert kid, go to your room by yourself, they're like, oh no,
Awesome.
not my room. So I think a lot of this starts with an awareness of who your kids are and what gets them excited, and then being patient about that. And then being reacting to it when it's time to react, and kind of see what they're into. And then the other thing is that making it part of your family. Like goals are part of it. Like I wrote this book called Soundtracks about mindset, and there's a teen version of it called Your New Playlist. But soundtracks are part of our family discussion. So we'll talk, a soundtrack is just our phrase for a repetitive thought. So an example of a soundtrack, like a dad who thinks he has to go all or none, I'd say some beats none. Some beats none. Like if you only have time, like what dads do is they go, I want to run 3 miles every day. I don't have time today, so I'm going to do none. And I'll go, 1 mile is more than none. 1 mile is infinitely, like some beats none. It's just a soundtrack. But our family at the dinner table, we talk about soundtracks. Like when we're out and about, we talk about, to the point that now my daughter who's in London texted me and said, hey, I got 2 new soundtracks. I'd rather be tired than regretful. So she's like, if I'm tired, I'm not coming back and hanging out at the study house and spending time on my phone. I'm going to go to that coffee. I'm going to go to that play. I'm in London. I got a window. I'd rather be tired than regretful. It's a great soundtrack. Another one she said was sophomores don't get embarrassed. She's like, nope, we left embarrassment freshman year. Like, we got to be bold and brave as sophomores. So she taught her sorority sisters, sophomores don't get embarrassed. Remember, like sophomores don't get embarrassed. And so I think it's easier to get your kids involved in things when the whole family is already involved. So when we're talking about it, I think it's hard when you don't have goals to then tell your kid, you got to go have goals. And then as a dad with sons, I would say you have to push through that sullen wall that they initially throw up often. Like it's thinner than you think. Like there's times when it's really thick. I don't want to exaggerate. But what I've seen is where somebody will go, hey, like even with my daughters, I'll go, hey, let's do a loop around the neighborhood. Let's get some vitamin D. I want to talk. And they go, nah. And I'll go, come on, you can do it. Let's go. And then they'll go and they have a great time. But there was a sullen wall that as a dad, where I think dads fail their kids is when they're afraid of their kids and they're afraid to push through that wall. And they get scared of their kids. And then like you see an 18-year-old kid and you're like, what a jerk. That kid started pushing back at 6. And the kid doesn't want to be in charge of the house. That's what you have to remember. It's terrifying for a 6-year-old to feel like I'm in charge of the house. It's all on me. But if you as a parent start to get afraid of your kid and stop kind of pushing through that sullen wall, the wall gets thicker. The kid gets in more control. The kid feels so scared because like, I'm 14. I shouldn't be running the house. I'm not equipped to run this house, but nobody's stepping up. So I guess I better run this house. So that's what I encourage with goals is like, there's been times with our kids where we'll say, okay, like, let's do it for a month. Give us a month. Oh, the school activity, like, okay, like give us a semester and we'll reassess at the end of the semester. And like, can we come to a compromise on that? You don't want to do it. And often like it's their favorite thing they did. And they might not tell you that, but like you can see they're on fire when they come home like, man, track was crazy today. Like, and you're so glad that when they threw up that initial pushback of I don't want to do track, none of my friends are doing track is dumb, that you said, let's just try it. Let's try it for a week and see what happens. Let's try it for a week. And then that for me is one of our roles as a parent is to push through that sullen wall.
That is so true, man. And you're right. I mean, you've raised 2 daughters. I've raised 4 boys. You know, some of their biggest victories were the things that they didn't want to do. And we just said, why don't we just try it? Just for a season. Yeah. If you don't like it after that,
see what happens. Let's see what happens. And we can
see what happens.
I'm not forcing you. This isn't forever. But I think the challenge is it's hard for them to know we know them better than anybody and we love them like crazy. And so like we say, that's a soundtrack we say to our kids all the time is like, none of the decisions we're making are so that you'll have a worse life. None of the decisions we're making are so you'll have I want you to be a successful, happy, content, fulfilled kid. Like that's all we're trying to do. So like when we explain decisions and go like, hey, here's the, But we try to have a really honest, like, conversation interaction with our kids. One thing we did specifically that I posted about it, and it was funny to see the reaction. Our daughters had kind of a get out of jail free card in us. And what I mean by that is if they were somewhere at a party and they felt pressure for whatever, they could text us and their code was real quick. So if they started a text and said, hey, real quick, can I go to so-and-so's house? Hey, real quick, can I give so-and-so a ride home? We knew it meant they wanted us to write back and go, no, you have to get home right now. And then they could be like, yeah, my parents are such jerks. Like, oh, I would love to stay and do this terrible thing you're all planning to do. But do you know my parents? Like, we taught them over and over, throw us under the bus. Throw us under the bus. Like, let us be the bad guys in the situation, because I'm not going to abandon my 16-year-old daughter to an 18-year-old boy that's putting pressure on her. So like that little cheat code was worth its weight in gold, dude.
I'm totally. I just literally jotted that down. I'm totally stealing that.
Yeah, it's the best, gold. Dude. It's the best. And like I had some people go, well, you live in a world of fear. I'm like, no, I live in reality. Like that's the thing. Some of the stuff I get kind of frustrated about is when dads will go, well, I didn't have a problem with gambling. My kid won't either. And I'd go, hey, when you were 12, you would have had to ride your Huffy to a riverboat casino in Mississippi. Your kid just has it on his phone. So don't do when I was his age. It doesn't exist anymore. They live in a world that doesn't your world doesn't exist. So like you would have had to know in a bookie, or they'll go, well, my kid won't struggle with porn. Dude, the entire world's collection of porn is on their phone. Like when I was a kid, our internet porn was you found a magazine in the woods somebody had thrown out and it had been rained on by the time you found it and was the size of an accordion and it had earthworms on it. Like, and now like, and so like and like fentanyl, I know friends whose kids have died from fentanyl. And so like we say honest things to our kids, like, hey, you can't experiment. Like I know, you can't, like there's fentanyl in more than you think. Like you can't. Like we talk about that a lot. And so that's the other thing I try to get dads especially to get is like that the world is so different, and not to lead from a fear-based place, but to lead from a place of reality. Like to go like, hey, no, here's things to be smart about. Like, hey, no, here's things to be deliberate about. So I don't think we've raised very brave kids, but we've also raised very realistic kids.
It's interesting you say that, about the generational differences. I had Nikki Sixx from Motley Crue on the podcast, and I actually had my oldest son in on that interview because he loves music. He loves Motley Crue, and Nikki Sixx said the exact same thing. So Ethan, my oldest, asked him a question at the end. He was just like, hey, do you have any advice for my generation? And Nikki Sixx was like, yeah, I do actually. He goes, this is going to feel like a shotgun blast to your face, but that's okay. I'd rather you be alive than in a coffin. He's like, when I was a kid, we would steal weed or whatever, or grab some beers or whatever. And like, we were just being kids. He's like, the drugs today, man, they will straight up kill you. They will, it'll be laced with something. He's like, there isn't a week that goes by I don't read about some high school athlete that nobody ever saw coming, tried drugs for the first time and died. Yeah. He's like, drugs today will kill you. And my son was like, wow, that's deep. He goes, yeah, but it's better to have you alive than in a coffin. So I agree with that.
Wow, good for Nikki Sixx. Good for Nikki
Sixx.
Yeah. One more thing he and I have in common. One more thing.
Of several.
People say that all the time. They're like, Jon Acuff is like the nonfiction Nikki Sixx. That's a phrase a lot of people apply to me.
I could totally see that. See that. Before we head out of here today, you mentioned you have a new book coming out. I don't know if you can talk about it, but I'd love for you to share just any breadcrumbs you have about it. We'd love to hear.
Yeah, so the new book comes out in September. It's called How Teens Win. And it's a guide to goals for teens. And it's written by teenagers. My daughters wrote it. And what's been fun, so we did one called Your New Playlist, which is soundtracks for teens, and it's being taught in school. And that's really fun because that one's a mindset book. And my hope is in 20 years, every kid has a mindset class. Because 20 years ago, they didn't have a finance class. 20 years ago, our plan with kids with finances was, here's a credit card, try not to buy a jet ski. And then we would go, so weird, they wrecked their life with bad debt. And you're like, no, it's not. We didn't give them any information. But now every freshman in high school, in America at least, has a personal finance class. So my hope is in the future, they'll have a mindset class because your mindset is so critical to the things you end up doing. I hope they'll have a goals class because if you can figure out kind of what fires you up, how you work best, how you get things done, like the entire world opens up. There's, like you can accomplish anything. And it took me until my like 30s and 40s to really get that. So I've got a real heart for kids getting that at 12. Like when I meet a 21-year-old who's like flipping sneakers online and hustling, I'm like, oh, dude, this is you get it. Like this kid is going to go so far. So a lot of those kind of books that we end up writing that are for teenagers are kind of, I want to give them the keys it took me till 30 or 40 to get. And if they'll use them, man, there's a lot they can do.
Can't wait for that to come out. That is going to be, you mentioned that you pay your kids to read books, and I've done the same. My oldest and I read Relentless together.
Oh, nice.
And,
the Tim Grover book?
Oh, man. Tim Grover book, yeah. And the speaking of goals, right? We actually came up with a sheet, right, of like what pages we were going to be on by the week, and then when our accountability check-in was going to be. And then at the end of, I think it was 2 months that took him to read the book. But then at the end of 2 months, there was $500 like waiting for him if he did everything he was supposed to do. Yeah, and we love the process. But I'm gonna pick up that book, and that's gonna be the next book we're gonna. Dude,
I'll get you a copy. I'll totally add you to the early influencer list. Now that I know you're rolling with Nikki Sixx, let's go.
Well, you guys have so much in common. I'm actually surprised I didn't meet you guys together.
When you said that, I was like, why are we both on this podcast? He's already done this stuff. You know what I mean? Like, I was like, I guess have two different guys. Yeah, it's so funny.
It's so funny, man. Where's the best place for men to connect with you? I know you have Instagram. I follow you on Instagram, but like as far as like where men can follow you to get the best information, your books and the whole 9 yards.
Yeah, I have a podcast called All It Takes Is a Goal where I talk about this stuff a lot. And my website is jonacuff.com, JONACUFF.com. And yeah, the two most recent books are soundtracks, and then All It Takes Is a Goal. And you can usually find me just about anywhere with Jon Acuff.
I love it, man. Well, guys, not to worry. We're going to have all the links in the show notes. We'll have all of Jon's books. We'll have his website, his Instagram. All you have to do is head on over to thedadedge.com/469 for this show. Again, thedadedge.com/469. Jon, from my heart to yours, this was awesome. I love your energy. I love everything about what you stand for, the things that you write. And thank you so much for fulfilling the requests of the audience. That I got numerous requests. You got to have Jon Acuff
awesome, dude. We'll do it again. So, this is the first time of hopefully many.
Yeah, man. Every time you write a book, man, let's have you on.
That's a dangerous statement. I'm prolific. I've been writing a book with my feet this entire interview. Let's go.
That's awesome, man. Thanks again, brother.
Thanks, Larry.
Appreciate you. You bet.